beginning of the new month of Nissan, the month of miracles, the month of Geula, the month of redemption, the month of Pesach, and it's brought down. And this is the accepted idea that B'Nisan Nigalu, the Jewish people were redeemed, meaning back the new month in when we left Egypt with in the story of Passover of Pesach, we left on the 14th and the 15th of Nisan. So the 14th was the day of the Paschal Lamb, and then on the 15th they left the midday. They left Egypt, and after 49 days, on the 50th day, they received the Torah in Mount Sinai and made eventually, after 40 years, their way to Eretz Yisrael. So when were they redeemed? They were redeemed in Nisan, and it's brought down that B'Nisan Nigalu, that we were redeemed the first time. The first major redemption happened in Nisan. Hey Pinchas, and B'Nisan Asidim L'Doel, we're going to be redeemed as well in Nisan.
Amen.
So Chaim, good Chodesh and good Erev Shabbos. Tonight this week is also Parshat Vayikra. We started a new book, the third book of the Chumash. Last week we completed Vayakra Pekudah. We made a Chazak. We completed the book of Shemais, of Exodus, and now we start the book of Vayikra. And the book of Vayikra deals primarily with halachas, laws that some of them are connected, like especially the first beginning, with the sacrifices and the service in the Beis HaMikdash in the Holy Temple, and in the Mishkan and the Tabernacle. And like we spoke last week, that kind of the last week's Parsha kind of really talks about, kind of puts together the third Parsha in Vayikra, which is Parsha Shmini, which is the day, the dedication of the Tabernacle, together with the completion of Shemais, because Shemais really finishes off the last few Parshas, primarily, besides for the golden calf, deal with the laws and the building of the Mishkan. And it finishes off last week that after they completed the Mishkan, and they dedicated the mission for 7 days in Chinuch, in an education, which we learn about it more in detail in Parshat Tzav next week, that Moshe finally put up the Mishkan on the 8th day. And so when he blessed the Jewish people with the bracha of Yihinoyim Hashem Alekeinu, that God should be with Ma'asedeinu Koinin Aleinu, Reb Shimon. And that happened on the 8th day. When was the 8th day that he started the service of the tabernacle? And when the Shechina, the fire, came down to show the sign that Hashem is dwelling and resting amongst the Jewish people through the Mishkan, was B'Yom HaShmini, on the 8th day, which is the Rosh Chodesh Nissan. So we're, again, like we speak every year, that these parshas happened around this time of the year, because in the second year, means a year, almost a year after they left Eretz Mitzrayim, Egypt, and as they were still, by that point, they were still by Mount Sinai, they hadn't moved yet. On the first, so 1 year shy, 15 days, it's been a while, it's good to see you, is from those, a year later, is the Jewish people built the Mishkan. And they dedicated the Mishkan on the 1st of Nisan. And we have afterwards, as this kind of all these things come together, it actually connects very nicely. Shemais, Vayikra, and Bamidbar, because the second Parsha, Bamidbar, talks about the dedication of the Mishkan that started really also on the 8th day. And the first of the 8th day was dedicated by the tribe of Judah, Yehuda, brought the sacrifice. Nachshon and Aminadav, the tribe of Judah, represented the tribe of Judah, came to give his gift on behalf of his tribe, and so too every day for the next 12 days the tribes gave gifts, carbona sacrifices, to the temple, to the Mishkan, starting from Rosh Chodesh Nissan. So, and that we learn about in Sefer Bamidbar, in the book of Numbers. So it comes together really. It's all happening on the same day. What is discussed at the end of the Pekudah, and discussed in the middle of Vayikra, and discussed also in the beginning of Bamidbar, is all talking about the same day, the first day of the dedication of the tabernacle, which was on the Rosh Chodesh Nissan of the second year, and this all comes together tonight. When we're sitting here tonight, 5,786. And it says, Hayom Elu Niskarim V'Nasa, that when great days that happen in Jewish history, I mean, this is a great day. This is the day, of the dedication of the tabernacle. The first time. Because the first 7 days, I go to a shul that's literally across the street from where I'm sitting now. It's an old shul in Jerusalem, in what's called a chutzner. A chutzner is a kind of a place. It's called a courtyard, like an old courtyard, which has, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15, maybe 20 even apartments that was built maybe 150 years ago, and no one has to pay money. It was built as a donation by Mr. Rand, who is a big Baal tzedakah, a big person who gave charity and wanted to build and provide for the needy in Eretz Yisrael. And the people lived then in Israel, in Eretz Yisrael, where this is in the times of maybe even before the Chovevei Tzion. This is definitely before the war, before 1948, definitely. And that he built this chutzner, this courtyard. Moshe Rabbeinu at the time, it was the middle of nowhere, because where I'm sitting now was only developed in the past maybe 70, 80 years. And in this chutzner, it's called after him. It's called Batei Rand, the house of Rand, because he was the one who funded it. And he said these are the houses, and what they do basically is they pass the key over. So when someone leaves the apartment and gives the key over, you pay what's called Schlüsselgeld. You pay money for the key. So you could sell the key for, I don't know how it works exactly, if it's a regular price of a house or if it's cheaper. I'm sure it's a bit cheaper. It's called Schlüsselgeld. But no one really owns the land. The land is owned by, I guess, a foundation predating the state by the family of foundation of the House of Rand. And in it, they have a shul and a mikvah, like a proper chutzner. It's a proper little place where people live, and it's actually surrounded by a wall. It means the apartments make up a wall. We learned last night, those who joined us in the Megillah class, we learned that there's a concept of that they would make a wall out of the houses. And that's literally what Batei Rand is. And all these chatzerim, that the apartments themselves created the wall, and there's gates to the wall where people could go in, but it's protected. They have gates and they have closing the gates and etc. I mean, it's usually open for people to go in, but in theory, there's gates. And so they have a shul upstairs, and that shul they have the minhagim. And one of the customs is that they stop saying tachnon from the 7 days of dedication of the tabernacle. Means they count back from Rosh Chodesh Nissan. I think it's 23rd. So they do 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, depending if there's 30 days in Adar or not. So either they start on the 23rd or they start on the 24th. I think that's how they do it. And they stop saying tachnon. I asked if I'm a beneficiary of this, because I don't say tachnon either. Today I'm going to go down there. It's Rosh Chodesh. We don't say tachnon anyways. So I asked him, what's the marker? What's the source? I've never seen something like that before. I've never been to a shul where they stop saying tachnon. They stop saying confession, which is a sign of celebration for the 7 days of the dedication of the chinuch, of the education. Because the 7 days we learn next week that Moshe educated Aaron. You can't. There's a yisoid. This is a very important yisoid, the foundation that is applicable till today. Here we have Aaron Cohen. Aaron is the great older brother of Moshe, who God talks to as well. He's a prophet, but like in everything, you need an education. You can't just say, okay, now we're going to start being the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. How do you know how to be a high priest? You need an education. So in everything in life, you need an education. I was once in Rabbi Farkash Senior's house in Yerushalayim. Rabbi Farkash from Bellevue's father's house. It was many years when I first got married. So we're talking about 1997, close to 30 years ago. I remember he was sitting with his son, Rabbi Farkash Jr., and he was saying that in everything in life, you need chinuch. In everything in life, you need education. Even to give tzedakah. Even to give charity. A person thinks, I'm a charitable person, so I know how to give charity. It's not like that. Anything in life, you need education. Even how to give charity. There's an obligation for the people who know, have been experienced, know to give a chinuch. And you have to educate your children to give tzedakah. It's like anything in life. Even Aaron HaKohen needed education to know how to do the Beis Hamikdash, to do the Mishkan. So these 7 days up until Rosh Chodesh Nissan were the 7 days that Aaron was being educated with his sons. Then he had 4 sons. Still, 2 of them were still alive. The first 2 that died, Nadav and Avihu, we learn next in 2 weeks. They were all being educated how to be Kohanim and Kohen Gadol. And every day Moshe put up the Mishkan and took it back down. On the 8th day, he puts it up for the final time. And it says, for some reason, but that time, when he put it up the final time, was when Hashem, the Shekhinah, came down. No one was able to lift the Karushim. No one was able to lift the beams. because of the great revelation that was going to happen on that day, God told Moshe, you pretend like you're lifting it up. Just put your hands underneath and I'm going to help you lift it up. So we spoke many times about the completion of the book of Shemais with the beginning of the book of Vayikra. That Shemais, like the Alter Rebbe says, Shemais finishes off with the idea that Moshe describes us in the Torah. The Torah tells us that Moshe couldn't enter. On the 8th day, he could not enter the tabernacle. Why? Because the Shechina, the presence of Hashem, the Onon, the cloud representing the spirit, the godliness, come and descends onto the Mishkan. Moshe can't enter. It's too great of a revelation. And it says, Vayikra Moshe, God calls to Moshe. So we finish off last week. It's an amazing thing. We finish off last week that Moshe can't go in. It's too powerful. It's too godly. Too much aura, too much light. Vayikra Moshe, God calls Moshe, and that's why it has a little aleph to signify that God had to kind of contract the revelation in order to make Moshe able to walk into the Mishkan. And God starts telling him the laws that we learned about in this week, the laws of the sacrifices, the laws and then next week we learn about that. It's not so clear if Vayikra happened in the first day of the 7 days or the first day of the 8th day. It's mashma. It happened on the 8th day. But we learned about the sacrifices. We learned about what Moshe Rabbeinu was able to learn about how to himself to get an education from God. It said God would tell Moshe portion after portion, and he would wait for Moshe to be able to digest and dissect and to understand what he's being told. Because again, who's Moshe's teacher? Moshe's teacher was God. God taught Moshe the Torah. And this is a tradition, by the way. This is what the Rambam teaches us. Well, it's very important to know this. Chinuch, education, is a very important part of our system, of our belief system, and not just belief system, but the system of Yiddishkeit. Like when the Rambam quotes the tradition of Torah, it means he received from this person, received from that person, and that person received from that person. There's no such thing as just coming up with your own thoughts and ideas about Torah. You're supposed to use your mind to expand. But the principles of Torah and the rules of Torah and the laws of Torah gets passed on in education. And the first educator was God. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. We say this in Pirkei Avos. Moshe received Torah from Sinai, Misara, Yeshua, L'Skenim. There's a tradition of how it passes down. When we know by Chasidim, there's a tradition of the Holy Baal Shem Tov. That the Holy Baal Shem Tov came and introduced what was seemingly a new idea to the world, idea of Hasidic philosophy, the idea of teaching of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. But the Baal Shem Tov clearly said he also had a teacher. It wasn't like the Baal Shem Tov sat. What's interesting is it says the only person who didn't have a teacher, really, that we know about, at least in the beginning, was our father Avraham. The Rambam actually clearly says that Avraham Avinu was. It says his Hashem made his, so to say, his kidneys, his inner body taught him. But that was defined Hashem. But then the Torah mitzvahs, we have to assume he went to Shem. He went to the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. He studied in that yeshiva, the same yeshiva that his grandson Yaakov studied in, and his son Yitzchak studied in. There's a family yeshiva, the yeshiva of his grandfather Shem. So he found from himself the godliness, the one God, but the actual studying of Torah, he probably learned in the yeshiva. I think it says clearly. So you have the Baal Shem Tov himself. It's brought down. He writes a letter. I have a letter in my house of a book, but this is a famous idea. It's not unique. That the Baal Shem, it's not something that's a hidden idea. The Baal Shem Tov, his teacher Achia Shaloni, Achia the prophet, who's in the times all the way from the Rambam says Achia Shaloni knew Moshe Rabbeinu. He left Egypt, and he lives in old times. So I think to me he's one of the most fascinating. A lot of people are fascinated by the idea of Elijah the prophet. Everyone knows about Elijah the prophet. Elijah comes to every circumcision. He comes to every Seder. Soon, in 15 days, he's going to be at our Starim. He's going to be in 14 days. He's going to be at the Seder. Right? When you stand in the Chabad house or wherever, in the University District Minyan, Pesach Seder, or wherever you're going to be, Elijah the prophet is going to show up and take a sip of the wine. or the grape juice, say l'chaim, bench everyone, bless everyone, listen to everyone's needs, and give them what they need. Versus Hashem. And before that, the Hine Nechi Shalech Lechem, Es Eliyahu Navi Lifnei Yom Abayim, Elijah the prophet is coming any minute to announce a day before Mashiach comes. And we know that's not just an idea of a Kabbalah, it's brought down Halacha, the tractate of Eruvin, when it talks about the laws of the spaces you could go from Shabbos. It tries to figure out how Elijah the prophet could come on Shabbos, because he's not allowed. How's he going to come from heaven down to earth? It violates certain laws of Shabbos. So the Gemara literally goes into the question: when could Elijah the prophet come? That he shouldn't violate the laws of Shabbos. So we see this is part of our tradition in Halacha, and it's brought down in Malachi. It's brought down in the prophets that God is going to send Elijah the prophet. So everyone's fascinated with Elijah the prophet. But when the most hidden, be under the scenes. And the teacher of Elijah the prophet is Achia Shaloni. The Rambam says Achia Shaloni was the one who gave over the tradition to Elijah, and Achia Shaloni also doesn't die, but he's not an angel. He just doesn't die. He's been around since Moshe Rabbeinu's times, and he is the teacher of the Baal Shem Tov. Clearly, the Baal Shem Tov writes about this, and the Baal Shem Tov says that he started to learn with him the beginning of Torah when he turned 26, and he finished the Torah in 10 years. Obviously, he didn't teach him just Vayomer Hashem Moshe and the Yiddish. In every single verse, he taught him every single idea of Torah. So in 10 years, he started from Bereshis, and the Baal Shem Tov said when he turned 36, they finished the Eini Kol Yisrael, the last pasuk in the Chumash, and that's when the Baal Shem Tov revealed himself. But the idea is the Baal Shem Tov had a teacher also. The teachings of Chassidus was passed down, was a Kabbalah, was a tradition that was taught down and passed down from Achia Shaloni to the Baal Shem Tov. So everyone has an education. And Moshe is educated by God, and comes Moshe Rabbeinu and he says he can't go in anymore. He's reached the point that's too high. Like the Alter Rebbe says, the cloud over the base over the Mount Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to go in, but he can't go into the cloud. The revelation is so great. This is the idea. The idea is the revelation is so great that God has to call Moshe and empower Moshe. And that's where the two parshas meet. And this is not just a calling for Moshe Rabbeinu. And you say, what's that have to do with me? In every single Jew, like the Alter Rebbe says in the story Vayikra, right? The Alter Rebbe was in jail, and he comes and he's met by the jailer, the head of the jail system of Russia, comes to meet the Alter Rebbe. And he says to the Alter Rebbe, I know you're a scholar, I want to ask you a question. And he says, sure. And he says, why does God ask Adam Vayikra, where are you? After the sin of the tree of knowledge, when Adam and Chava ate from the forbidden fruit. So God comes to Avraham, to Adam and says, and to Chava and says, Vayikra, where are you? And the Russian Gentile, who was also a Bible reading person, says to the Alter Rebbe, why does God have to ask Adam where he is? God knows where he is. I mean, even on a basic level, there's only two people in the world. God knows where Adam is. Why does he have to ask Vayikra? God knows everything. So the Alter Rebbe asks the head of the jail, the prison system, do you believe the Torah is eternal? Do you believe that the Torah is a message for everyone? He says, of course. So the Alter Rebbe told him that the question of Vayikra is not just one question that God asks first man. God asks every man, Jew, Gentile, man, woman, Vayikra, where are you? What have you been? That's yesterday's Hayom Yom. If the Rebbe writes in yesterday, for you, today's Hayom Yom, if you're not making a seviva, if you're not affecting people, if you're not creating an environment of godliness around you, what are you doing in the world? Was tust du auf der Welt? What are you doing on the world? God says to the Jew, to every person, Vayikra, where are you? What are you doing? What have you done with your life? So it's eternal. So too, the idea of Vayikra Moshe, that God calls to Moshe, is eternal. And not just to Moshe Rabbeinu, but to every person. God calls and empowers the person, man and woman, child and adult. Vayikra, God calls us and says, there is no space you can't enter. The Mishkan may look intimidating to you. The Mishkan may look like a place that's overwhelming of godliness, and you may think, who am I to enter the mountain of God? Who am I to walk into the holy temple? Who am I to walk into the tabernacle with the great revelation of godliness? Yadi inish benafshe, each of us know we're not perfect, we're far from it, and we may feel ashamed to walk into the temple, and God says, no, Vayikra. And he's going to, the God says, I'm going to make the olive small. I'm going to make it easy for you to walk in. But here the Rebbe says a fabulous thing I learned last night with Reb Shimon's son-in-law, Adam, amazing idea the Rebbe says, which is very important. A lot of times in life, when we have big moments in our life, like big revelations, big excitement, so we forget about the people around us, or maybe we forget about the people that we think are beneath us. No one's beneath anyone, but we think sometimes, like, right now it's just a big moment. Like, it's even brought down that when you're in the presence of a king, you don't look at the small things. You're just looking at the king. Sometimes even in a family, right? When a person's in an event, you have to ask yourself, am I including my family in this event? Or if I'm running away from my family to this event? Or am I including other people? The Rebbe didn't like when a person showed up in 770. If you were a shliach, what are you doing here? What are you doing by this road? You have to go, you have people that you have to take care. If you have it, everyone has to come once in a while. But in general, the Rebbe would say, what are you doing here? Go back to your community. Go back to the people that you need to affect. The Rebbe says an amazing thing that Moshe couldn't go into the Ohel Moed. It was so great, but Vayikra, God called him and put a small aleph and said, you're taking the energy of the Mishkan and go back out and go out and teach use that to empower yourself to go out to the world. It's not the purpose of entering the tabernacle is not to stay in the tabernacle. The idea of entering the tabernacle is to charge your battery and quickly go back out and affect the world. Shabbos, a lot of times people try to run away to Shabbos. The whole week you're thinking, when can I just forget about everything and go to Shabbos? That's the wrong attitude. You're not running away from the week to Shabbos. Shabbos is a time to take energy to go out into the week and do your job. The purpose of creation is when Mashiach comes, it's going to be Yom Shekul Shabbos Menucha. But until that time, the purpose of creation is Sheishas Yom Teyasa. Go out there 6 days in the week. Go out there in your mundane life and bring Hashem. And that we learn from Vayikra, that God says, go to the tabernacle, but then go back out. There's a small aleph. Don't forget about the small things within you. Don't forget about the small things around you. Don't forget about the people you could show your experience. Take that energy from the Beis Hamikdash. Take that energy from going to 770. Take that energy from going to the oil and use it for someone else. It's not an isolated moment. It's not a private moment. The measurement is, if you can't go out of a big moment in your life and teach someone about that, someone else benefits from that, then what was the point of the experience? It's not just a private moment. If you have something exciting in your life, or something very telling, or something educating in your life, you have to teach someone else. You have to take someone else, include someone else in your experiences. Include the parts of you that are not awake when you're standing there by the oil. You're not awake when you're standing there in the Beis Hamikdash. Your Yetzer Hara that goes to sleep. When you come out, you say B'chol Avavcha, you turn around, you say to Yetzer Hara, Chevra, look, inside, we have a lot of work to do with ourselves. You tell yourself, Baruch Hashem gave me 120 years, like we learned many times, enough time for me to talk to my Yetzer Hara and to talk to my body and to talk to my knees and to focus them for Hashem. And that's how the two parshas connect. Two parshas connect. The idea is, first of all, we have to know that every person has a calling to the Beis Hamikdash. No person should ever walk to the tabernacle and turn around and say, it's not for me. It's too much light, too much or. There's Moshe, Aaron. That anyone who had to do with the Mishkan, aside from Moshe Rabbeinu, was doing it as an atonement for a sin, the gravest of sins, the sin of the golden calf. There is no sin that's too great, and there is no door that's shut for tshuva, and there's no person that can't enter the mountain of Hashem, unless the Torah says so. There's very few people, whether you're tamei or something else, but in general, a person should never feel that you're not invited. A person should never feel that Hashem doesn't want to see you. Hashem doesn't only want to see you, He's calling you. And He's not only calling you for you to escape into the tabernacle, He's actually giving you a mission. Go take the energy of the Beis Hamikdash, make a Beis Hamikdash everywhere. And that is in small things. You don't have to sit down and spend my whole life thinking, how am I going to build a temple in Seattle? How am I going to build a temple in my home or my life? Start with small things. Every small thing, like it says, doesn't have to be big things. We learned in this week's Parsha small sacrifices. A little matzah, a little korban mincha, a small bird. It could be a sheep, it could be a cow. It doesn't make a difference. The person shouldn't think, what am I bringing to the Beis HaMikdash? I have nothing to bring. I have nothing to sacrifice. Very little I could give Hashem. Not just in Gashmis, but also in Ruchnis. Look at myself. You look at yourself in the mirror and say, what could I give? What could I possibly give Hashem? Whether it's a lot, whether it's a little, the main thing is that you should have liba l'shamayim, your heart's for Hashem. It's not, the God doesn't look at what you're giving, He looks at how you're giving it. Cain could have given a nicer, a bigger, more expensive, but it was how he gave it that was wrong. Hevel gave the way he made. I don't know if the actual sheep he gave was more expensive, but what he had, he gave the best. Kol chayil Hashem. He gave his whole all to Hashem. His heart was there. His kavanah was there. The purpose of his sacrifice was there. And this is all comes together in starting on Rosh Chodesh Nissan, the month of miracles, the month where we start with changes. The Jewish people in Egypt also weren't perfect, far from perfect. The angels couldn't figure out what the Jews are doing getting out of Egypt. What's so special about the Jews? He said, everyone serves idols. What's so special about the Jews? The Rambam clearly talks about in the laws of Avodah Zarah that everything that Avraham Avinu learned was forgotten by 11 of the 12 tribes. Only the tribe of Levi stayed with the program. Otherwise, the other tribes fell back. That's what Rambam writes in the laws of Avodah Zarah. And the angels were saying, what's going on? But Hashem says, never mind all that. This is the month of miracles. This is the month of revelation from above. These are my children. They may look like street children. They may look like everyone else. They're not. These are my children. These are the descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. And every Jew has to know that about themselves as well. You're God's people. You're the chosen people. And just like in Yetzias Mitzrayim, God revealed Himself, and He gave an opportunity for change, and gave an opportunity for miracles, an opportunity from revelation from above. And from there we built the Beis HaMikdash, also in Rosh Chodesh Nissan, where God calls us and tells us you can enter, and God gives us, empowers us to enter. We have to take this week and start knowing that the Chodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim Rishon Hu Lachem L'Chadshei Shana. We're starting a new cycle. The beginning of the counting of the month, the first month in the Jewish calendar is tonight, is Nissan. It's the first day of the first month. We count the years from Tishrei, we count the months from Nissan. It's a new year. It's a new year for kings. It says Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim. The new year for kings is the beginning of Nisan, and the Jewish people are Bnei Malachim, are sons and daughters of kings. And it's a new start. And a new start with the building of the Mishkan. God empowers us today. And we start with, you don't have to look and wait until you could afford a big cow or a sheep or a goat. Even any kind of sacrifice. Start with the small things. To make sure that as long as your heart is there, your focus is there, your love for Hashem is there. And that could be bein adam l'makayim, bein adam l'chaveiroi. It doesn't have to be, it could be focused on something you can do, interacting with another person, being kinder to people, more understanding to people, more tolerant to people, helping people more, helping in the shul more. The person can say, what can I do? I can't donate $1,000 to the shul. Yes, but you could come in and put the svarim away. Or you could fold a talis up. Or you could make sure there's the minyan there. Hashem is not looking, you don't have to worry about the size of it, or how much it costs, or how much time it is. Just whatever it is you give, make sure it's real. And that's really what we learned about in this week's Parsha. And that's really what this Parsha is about. That's what today is about. That's what Rosh Chodesh Nissan is about. And now we're, like I said, B'nisim Hasidim L'Goyal, and the true Geula is not just a Geula for the world, but a Geula for every individual, that every person in their particular lives. It's not going to be a geula where you get lost in the moment. your own problems, your own things, that your own exile, your own gullus. You can be redeemed from your own personal gullus. It's going to be a personal moment, even though it's going to be a collected moment. Every person's personal things are going to be fixed. The people who are sick, whatever you're sick with physically or spiritually or other ways, you're going to be healed. You're going to be healed in your own way. And the things that are need fixing in your life will be fixed. And that day, everyone's going to be able to point and say, this is my Lord, this is my God, this is my temple on Temple Mount. And may be speeding in our time with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. With Chodesh, everyone, good Shabbos, please come to Shul. Like I said, new beginnings. So give chizuk and make sure to follow up all the announcements getting ready for Pesach. And I'm sure you could reach out to the management of University District Minyan or your local Chabad house to find out things that you would need for Pesach to help you particularly get ready for Pesach, and things that you may need in matzah and other things for Pesach, and maybe celebrate together here the Pesach with a Korban Pesach and Harabayis. We're dedicating the temple today. We should actually dedicate the physical temple on Temple Mount here in Yerushalayim. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim.
Laila Tov, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Chodesh Tov. We'll see you, B'ezras Hashem, next week. Take care.
Laila Tov, Rabbi.